Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parshat Vayera 5786, with the commentary of the Taam Dagan. We will explore quite a few themes and ideas regarding food, food etiquette, halacha, nutrition. We'll just run the gamut with all kinds of interesting ideas from this week's Parsha. It is chock full of food references, especially the very beginning, where we have the famous meal of Abraham feeding his guests, the angels who are dressed as Bedouin nomads. Let's get right into the Tam Dagan here. In chapter 18, verse 5, we see Ve'ekha pat lechem isadu libchem. He's tired, he's sick, he's probably in a lot of pain. He just had his brit milah, according to Rashi. It is the hottest day in the history of mankind, and he runs to these potential nomads, and he tells them, "I'm going to get you a little bit of bread, and I'm going to feed your heart, achar tavoru, and then you can go on. That's all you. I'm just going to give you some bread. You'll feed your hearts. You're good. Al kain avartem, and just as you came here, al avdechem yamru kain taaseh kasher dibarta, and just as you've passed by your servant, speaking about himself, like this, and they say, do whatever you said you're going to do." So first of all, it's clear it's sa'adu libchem. With bread, you're able to satisfy your heart. Your heart. Why your heart? So first of all, the Gemara tells us. I think it's the Gemara. Rashi brings it up anyway here. That it's the bread is nourishment for the heart, and we happen to know scientifically, although I'm not exactly sure why, but it says fiber reduces the risk for heart disease for reasons not well understood. That's the current science on the matter. Let me fix the grammar here if you don't mind. How do I do this? That'll do. Okay. All right. Just like bread is food for our physical bodies, Torah is food for our spiritual souls, explains the Chafetz Chaim and Shem Olam. And Abraham offered them bread, then told them they could leave. This seems a little bit rude. Here, come have some bread and then go. Right? So, but he was telling them that taking a walk after eating is considered healthy, as the Talmud tells us. So this is in Shabbat 41a tells us taking a short walk after food is considered a very healthy habit. I've witnessed myself, the Rav Chaim Fassman, Zecher Tzedek Livracha, would very often after Suda, I say often, it's probably always, knowing him, he was a very consistent man. He took these meals like that all the time. He would take a walk afterwards. Okay, so that's a couple of things there, and one last thing on this verse itself. The Talmud relates in precise detail the delicious, holy, healthy specifics of this meal that Abraham served these guests, these angels, including the need to avoid eating fatty foods and for following the customs of the locale, being satisfied with what we have, etc. A lot of details in the Gemara there in Bava Metzia, and basically goes on for almost a page or more describing this meal. Because why? Says the Chafetz Chaim in Avat Chesed, that's how we learn from reading these stories about Avram. We too will learn how to treat our guests. We'll see the guests also learn how to behave from these verses. That's another point to make as well. Okay, the very next point. So they said, let's do it. Go ahead, do what you said. So if you just basically pulled the pin on that grenade that we call Abraham, and he went and he did exactly that. V'yimahir Abraham ba'ohela. Abraham hurried to the tent. El Sarah, he went to Sarah Vayomar, and he said to her, "Mahari shalosh se'im kemach." Go quickly make 3 measures of kemach, of fine flour, solet, fine flour, lushi, v'asi ugot, knead it and make cakes out of it. So there's quite a bit to say here. Um, Abraham had so much bread made. This is a little bit of chiddush of my own here, but let's see if it makes sense to you. Abraham made a lot of bread for just 3 guests. Uh, I'm not able to eat a whole loaf of bread by myself. Right? You have 3 guests. You're making 3 loaves of bread. Um, for just these 3 guests, the respected members of Avram's household would be eating with them to show these members honor. So that's one opinion from the Ramban that maybe they ate with him. Other people ate as well, and then that would show honor to these guests. But perhaps it was so much food and so hurried to the point of becoming an impossible task. Avram got his wife and Yishmael to prepare cakes and meat from scratch. So perhaps this food they got, how are they supposed to eat this much food? And it takes a long time. Perhaps the food he got them to prepare was actually intended for future guests. Now that's a chiddush. Nobody else says this. And these guests he fed immediately as he promised. He says, I'm going to feed you now. This teaches us to always have prepared items on hand for future guests, as Abraham presumably had for these. Because of the Torah's concern for guests, a Torah scholar who does not have a lot of bread should not break it for guests, because he may subconsciously behave less generously than one should. So there's a rule there for a Talmud Chacham, for a Torah scholar, to be particular in the Gemara in Shabbat 140b. For their guests, Avram asks Sarah to make cakes of kemach, which is lower quality flour, and she uses solet, which is a higher quality flour. And I was debating whether to mention this part. I'm not really clear on it myself. I really should look into the source, into Pardes Yosef, in some more detail. I don't really understand what he's trying to say, but what he brings up a question, because I usually, at least according to the Talmud, women are not as generous as men when it comes to sharing food. Um, Whether that was the case back then, and that's maybe different now, I don't know. I don't know if that's a nature or nurture issue. That's not for now. The reason for this is that guests are so the reason for Sarah to make these higher quality food was because guests are usually uncomfortable with the food they receive, so they don't feel bad. One of the reasons why women are quote unquote thrifty or stingier is because they don't want their guests to feel bad. Oh, we're using up your good stuff. We're using the good china. We're eating the good flour now. They don't want people to feel that way. But in this case, Sarah did not want these guests to come back. Now, for whatever reason, it could be that she felt that they had a mission to do, which they did, or maybe she didn't know who they were, and they were and therefore she maybe she just wanted them to not have a bad influence on her home. I don't know. Either way, she used the better quality wheat, which is considered, which is unusual for the situation. Again, I'm not really completely 100% confident about this, but it's worth noting that there's a story told of Chaim Ozer Grzhinsky when he was suffering health conditions, and it was during Sukkot. He apologized to a guest for his bad health and said that because of his age and illness, he was actually exempt from the requirement to eat in the sukkah. Well, later during the meal, though, the visitor was surprised to find that Rav Chaim Uzer making his way back to the table, joining him right there at the meal. Rav explained that although he was exempt from eating in the sukkah, he was not exempt from the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, of hospitality. And he was there, and he served his guests, etc. So just because I'm too sick to eat doesn't mean There's no mitzvah. There's nothing that says I don't feel well enough. He obviously he knew himself. If you're not feeling well enough to do it, that's another story. But he felt well enough that he could serve his guests. All right, chapter 18, verse 8. This is a little detail of what he served them. Vika chema b'chala v'en bakar asher asa v'yiten lifnehem. He took curd and milk and the calf. He cooked. Then he made. Change that to made. Fits better with asa. V'yiten, he gave it. He put it before them, in front of them. Who omed alehem tachat ha'ed. He stood over them under a tree. V'yochelu, and they ate. So Avram serving these apparent nomads requires his lessening his honor, right? He's running to these Bedouins. He's the great Avram Avinu, but he didn't have to do this. But according to the Gemara, he learns this behavior from Hashem himself, who feeds us and serves us, despite being obviously this Hashem incomparably greater than us. So if Hashem can lower his esteem to feed us, how much more so can Abraham do that for others? In fact, Abraham was rewarded for each of his actions by Hashem later, doing similar things for his descendants. And just like that's the whole Gemara there in Bava Metzia. It goes into detail about just like Abraham served the milk, so Hashem served and served it directly. The Hashem later served the man directly, and not you don't have to like hit a rock or talk to a rock or do the hokey pokey or anything like that. It was just a simple. You woke up in the morning and you had man. That simplicity, that being delivered directly idea is in reward for Abraham doing the same for these guests. Interestingly, he did not really accomplish much, since these were angels, not angels. 1 second. Yeah. Rather, he is rewarded for attempting to do the right thing, right? His intent, his kavana. This is Rav Tzadok Cohen. Also, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz writes about this, that it's because he wanted to do the right thing. He didn't accomplish anything. He didn't feed anybody. All of this feeding and slaving away and all of that, it's the intent that matters. On the part of the guest, though, we can learn from these angels that a guest should always follow the instructions of a host if the host is a Talmid Chacham, as in this case it was. It's interesting that we'll see later on that they're also criticized for this behavior. So there's a plus and a minus to all this. Yeah, Abraham did not take out bread because Sarah was a nida, and bread would have been impure according to a stringency. This is, I think, Rashi brings up the point that, yeah, this is Rashi on the pasuk that brings up the fact that at this point, this is when the way of women came back to Sarah. Her menses began, and this made her a nida, and this would, according to a stringency, not the halacha. Don't worry, anybody can cook anything nowadays. But in a time when people cared more about these sorts of things, the bread would have become impure. Again, in a stringency, a chumrah. There are several explanations as to Avraham serving meat and milk at the same time, and it's unusual. And for this, we're going to. There's a lot of sources being quoted here, but they were all being quoted by the by of Ovadia Yosef and Yalkut Yosef. So first answer is he gave, as the verse says, he gave milk and then he gave meat. So it is possible to eat the meat almost immediately after milk, and so that would not be a problem. On I think that's Rashi's explanation, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's Rashi. That's how Rashi explains this. Second answer is Avram considered them to be Gentiles. It is permitted for them to eat meat and milk together. If right, they're just Bedouins, they're not Jews. He kept the Torah. He didn't eat what they were eating, but they ate. A Gentile can eat a cheeseburger or a taco with cheese or whatever. Right? That's nothing that we have to be concerned about. Um, and even if they made it from the ingredients that he gave them, that's on them. That's not something we need to be concerned about. Next is answer is Avram only fulfilled the positive mitzvot, but not the negative mitzvot. That's the Torah does say this. The commentary, the Gemara does say that Abraham kept the Torah, all of the Torah, but according to the Maharal here, it could be that he only kept the positive mitzvot of the Torah. He did not keep the negative ones, the thou shalt nots were not necessarily something he had to keep. Another answer: the prohibition to serve milk and meat together is rabbinic, right? The Torah doesn't say you can't serve them together, and that's rabbinic. And there are opinions that say that Abraham um, only kept Torah law. Sorry, um, probably spell that right. Which is, by the way, it's a hard opinion to really sustain, uh, because you would have to also say that Tchum is uh, is a Torah law, because the Talmud says that Abraham kept the laws of Tchum Shabbat, which is the 2,000 amot being outside the city is the furthest somebody can travel on Shabbat, even not carrying anything, just traveling wise. So to be able to say that is kind of a stretch, but it is the opinion of the Vilna Gaon. So I'm not going to be the one to argue with him. Um, even though angels are made of fire, which would cook the meat and milk as they ate it, this is not considered derech bishul. This is again, which is the normal way of cooking, and that's the opinion of Rav Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, otherwise known as the Stipler Gaon. So again, it's not really meat and milk because it's not cooked the way meat and milk is. So if you cook meat and milk in an unusual way, the prohibition to eat it becomes rabbinic. So if say I don't know, you melted your cheese onto your meat through the sun's heat on your car roof, right? And it leaks down from the sun off the roof onto your burger. So, as disgusting as that might be, right? Unless you have a super clean car, um, as disgusting as that might be, it's only rabbinically forbidden to eat that. I mean, besides bal tashaktu, which is you're not allowed to eat anything disgusting. But again, if it's not disgusting, your only issue is really a rabbinic issue, which is still an issue. Don't get me wrong, but you could possibly say that Abraham did not adhere to that. Um, and another answer is, and I think this might be the Yalkut Yosef's own answer, is Abraham placed the food on the table for them to choose. They can either eat meat or eat milk. It's up to them how they eat it, and they are, of course, again, Gentiles as far as Abraham is concerned, and they can eat whatever they want. immediately after relating that Abraham gives them meat and milk, Hashem in his Torah, Hashem in his Torah says that Abraham was, quote, standing over them under the tree as they ate. Right? So why does it have to say that? This implies that he was their mashgiach. He was supervising to make sure that they avoided eating foods that they shouldn't, including the meat and milk together. And a final answer that he quotes, and this is from the Malbim. It's an unusual Malbim because the Malbim doesn't usually get into Kabbalistic stuff. But he says that this was not a normal cow that Abraham shechted for them. This cow was made from the knowledge of Sefer Yetzirah, a Kabbalistic book explaining the secrets of creation. And you're able to make, using the Sefer Yetzirah, you're able to make all kinds of stuff, including animals. So that's what Abraham did. If you're looking to learn more about how to use Sefer Yetzirah to do magic, you're looking at the wrong rabbi. I'm not the kind who would dabble in such things. All right, the angels were, by the way, criticized for eating the meat and milk together later in history when they tried to stop Moshe from receiving the Torah from heaven. Hashem told them, "You ate meat and milk at Abraham's house, so you obviously cannot keep the Torah's laws yourselves." So this seems that they did eat, in fact, meat and milk, according to this midrash. But perhaps they did not eat, but only pretended to eat because it is considered good manners to adhere to the desires of the host. Thus, good manners and etiquette are good enough reasons for the Torah to have been given and received by the Jewish people. That's the Ben Ish Chai. After free meals that Avraham would usually give his guests, he'd give them free meals, absolutely free, no problem. Go ahead, eat all you want. Then he would charge them money. They'd say, "What do you mean? How can you charge us money? You told us it's a free meal." Then the conversation would turn and lead to the subject of their need to thank Hashem for being the source of all food. Okay. So that's all about Abraham and the Sarah and their three guests. So that was quite a bit of time on that. We're going to get into the next chapter, chapter 19, verse 3, and these guests, these two angels, then two of the three angels, then continue on to Sodom to rescue Lot and his family. And when he sees them, v'yivtzar bam ma'od, he begged them very much. V'yasuru elav, and they went to him. V'yavo el beito, and they went to his house. V'yas lahem mishta, he made for them a mishta, a party. Umatzot afa yochelu, and they ate unleavened bread. They ate matzah, right? So the feast that Lot made for these angels involves wine, as the word Mishnah implies. It comes from the shatat, to drink. So Lot's drinking so much is another factor that would eventually lead to his sinning with his daughters. So we've already, this is from the Sforno, we've already given several reasons for, these are not excuses, by the way, no, by no means, but to try to understand where Lot is coming from when he sins with his daughters. We've already had some commentary that explained, for example, we said before that he had a lack of self-control in last week's Parsha, so self-control can lead to these kinds of behaviors. He was greedy and wanted more and more of everything, so that could lead to these kinds of sins as he sinned with his daughters. And here we have wine. He's drinking, so he's drunk, and drunkenness can definitely lead to improper relations. 2 verses later, chapter 19, verse 5. V'yikru el Lot v'yamru lo ayeh hanashim asher bo alecha halayla. The men from Sodom gather around Lot's house, and they say, "Where are these men that came with you tonight? Hotziam aleinu v'neida utam." Bring them out so that we may know them. So interestingly enough, The commentaries here explain, in particular the Ramban, that the root evil of Sodom is their lack of generosity. Right? It's not, it's not, they, it's besides their perversions and and such. It's really the root cause. There's always a root for these kinds of things. The root cause in the case of Sodom is their lack of generosity, that they hated guests and they wanted to do harm to them. Um, Sharing food is the epitome of generosity, since food that one cannot feed to another is not even called food. There's a Gemara in Chulin 129b that says it's if you can't share it, it's not food. That's the definition of food is the sharing of it. On the same topic, chapter 19, verse 13. Sodom is called this place. Ki mashchitim anachnu. We will. The angels tell. The angels tell Lot, we are going to destroy this place. Et hamakom hazeh, this place. Well, why not just say Sodom? This place we're going to destroy. Et hamakom hazeh ki gadla tzakatam et penei Hashem v'shalchenu Hashem l'shachata. Hashem sent us to destroy it because the people are complaining. People are crying out. People are getting hurt here. People are praying to Hashem. And so Hashem has decided to destroy this place. And Sodom is called Hamakom Hazeh, this place, because the entire region needed to be destroyed. Not just the city of Sodom, but the entire valley, the whole region. Since they sinned due to their inability to provide people with luxury and comfort. This, so says the Znai in the Torah. Okay, a few verses later, chapter 19, verse 15. Ukamo hashachar Allah, when the sun came up, when it was morning time, the itzu hamalachim belot lemor, the angels hurried Lot, and they pushed him, right? Itzu, right? And they hurried him. Kum kach et ishtecha v'shtei benotecha. Take your wife, take your two daughters. V'nimtzaot pen tisapeh, and otherwise you will be wiped away. Ba'avon ha'ir, the sin of the city. It's a good name for a song. All right, or a show. All right, if a person ate a small amount of food, seems like this is going to be unrelated, but if a person eats a small amount of food, the halacha provides an estimated maximum time limit of 72 minutes after the last bite to say an after bracha. Brain fashod, al hamichya, al hagafen, al ha'etz, whatever the after bracha happens to be, except for birkat hamazon. You have 72 minutes after the last bite to say that blessing. Obviously, you should say it as soon as possible so you avoid the possibility of, God forbid, forgetting to say an after blessing. But you have up to 72 minutes if you're not sure you're done eating. You're gonna come back to it. You're sure? Okay. Anyway, this time limit is why 72 minutes. It's derived from the time it takes to walk 4 mil, which is about 2/3 of a mil is about 2/3 of a mile. So four of them is 2/3 times 4. We'll figure it out. Which is the standard estimation for the digestion of a small amount of food. That's how long it takes to digest it. Shiur equal, right? Altogether, that would be 18 minutes. So, like one, in other words, one. Right. So yeah. So 1 mil then is 18 minutes. So 18 times 4 would be 4 mil, which is that 72-minute period. The time it takes to walk 4 mil is how much time you have to say an after blessing. In a discussion regarding calculating the distance of a mil, the distance Lot travels from Sodom and Zoar is rejected. Why? Because he's very clearly here being hurried out. He isn't being just, he isn't walking normally. He's running, he's rushing, he's being shoved by these angels. So this whole idea of v'ya'itzu, to get out of here fast. So that sort of ruins our scientific discussion of how long it takes to walk that distance. For Lot, it was probably faster than the 72 minutes that we're talking about, or 18 minutes. But that's the discussion in the Gemara in Pesachim, I believe. 190 is, yeah. Okay. We skip quite a bit, and we get to the birth of Yitzchak. Yitzchak is born, and Abraham, his father, makes a big party for him. Um, V'yigdal, chapter 21, verse 8. V'yigdal hayeled, the boy grew up. V'yigamal, and he was weaned. V'yas Avraham mishta gadol. Avraham made a big party. Mishta again, that same word. B'yom higamal et Yitzchak, the day to celebrate the day that he was weaned. A child reaches the age of understanding when he can eat an olive's volume of grain, when he can taste grain. That's, remember, Taam Dagan. That's the taste of grain is very powerful thing. It's a sign of the beginnings of intelligence. Yeah. So when Yitzchak is weaned, he becomes obligated in chinuch, in learning Torah, and thus this event is really his bar mitzvah as well. That's what that's what bar mitzvah means, is that you are old enough to do the mitzvot. So so in that sense, it's like a bar mitzvah. That's Rav Shimon Sofer writes that. However, the above cited source is not discussing understanding right from wrong, but simply knowing how to eat. Right? He's weaned. Doesn't mean he's ready to learn Gemara, says the Tam Vedat. So he's able to, he's able to eat real food. Interestingly, Abraham, as generous as he is, would not usually serve wine for guests, but does so now for those who insist on drinking alcohol. So we know the dangers of alcohol. 2 Parsha ago, we spent quite a bit of time discussing all of the things that Noach did wrong in getting drunk and all the things that happened to him, etc. So that's a reason to avoid alcohol. That's probably why even the generous Abraham would not serve alcohol. Okay, a few verses later, chapter 21, verse 17. V'yishma Elokim, Hashem heard, this is Hagar and Yishmael are kicked out from the home because Sarah feels that Yishmael does not treat her son Yitzchak correctly. And so they are banished and they're starving. And it says, V'yishma Elokim et kol hanar. Hashem heard the voice of the young man, right? He's crying, he's hungry. V'ikra malach Elokim el Hagar min ha-shamayim. An angel from heaven came to Hagar, that's this boy's mother, Yishmael's mother. V'yomer la, and he says to her, Ma'ala Hagar, what's going on with you? Al tiri, don't be afraid. Ki shama Elokim et kol hanar kasher hu sham. Second. Because Hashem heard the voice of the child, as the verse begins. V'yishma Elokim. Here it says, Ki shama Elokim. Hashem heard the voice of the child as he is now. What does that mean, as he is now? So Rashi says that he's being judged as he is now, not in terms of what will be in the future inevitably with Yishmael and his descendants, that they're not going to be so nice always. And so Ishmael is indeed judged as he is now, presently, instead of being judged for the behaviors of his future descendants. What's with his future descendants? What incident are we talking about? So, aside from everything that's going on now, which is a rather, let's say, relatively recent development, they weren't always they weren't always violent against the Jews. There's times that they were, but for our purposes, the Rashi quotes an incident that occurred when the Jewish people were exiled from Israel and on their way to Babylonia. When, yeah, this can be found in the book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 21, verses 13 to 14. So over there's an incident when Yishmael's descendants, the Arabs, the pre-Muslim Arabs, fed the exiled Jews meat and fish, and then give them inflatable skin flasks of air, and like the air sort of like blows up their stomachs and causes the Jews to die. The question I have though is why were the Jews even allowed to buy it to eat this fish or meat in these sorts of things? How do they trust the kashrut? How do they know that, that these were kosher animals, that they were shechted correctly, and everything else? It's a question, and it's possible that they were allowed them because they were going to die otherwise. And when death is on the line, you don't need to be you don't need to be more strict than you have to be. You don't have to worry about kashrut. If that's the only food you have, that's what you eat. Prisoners in God forbid lo aleinu, in the death camps and such, they sometimes had to subsist on food that wasn't, ay ay ay, so kosher. Right? So that's normal and nothing to feel bad about if that's the situation into which Hashem has placed us. One moment. Okay. Um, okay, last verse that we'll study today. Vayita, we're basically not gonna really study at all the whole Akedah Yitzchak, which is a fundamental part of Jewish history and central part of the davening for Rosh Hashanah, etc. But our understanding of what Hashem wants and why Hashem does what He does, and the power and greatness of our ancestors. We're not going to study any of that. If you're really curious about those sorts of things, definitely check out my other videos on the Parsha or other people's videos on the Parsha. Any reliable sources would be good. But before we get to that, the last thing that Abraham does before he is commanded to do this is in chapter 21, verse 33. V'yita Eshel. He planted in Eshel, a tamarisk, Be'er Shava, in Beersheba. V'yikra Sham b'shem Hashem, and he called there in the name of Hashem, Kel Elyon, the God of the universe, or the God of forever, however you want to phrase that. The Hebrew word for tamarisk, this kind of tree, is eshel, as we read. What's an eshel? Eshel can be an acronym, says Rashi, for achila, shtia, and lina, eating, drinking, and lodging. Because this is the hospitality that Avram offered or offers different travelers. That's what he does. He is the eshel man. He provides housing, dining, and hospitality. And uh, and that being the case, the stress on these is due to Avram's intention to fix the errors of Adam, who ate the forbidden, so that's the eating, Noach, who drank in a shameful manner, and Lot, whose lodging with the people of Sodom was deplorable. Who says this? It's a good chap. That's a Vilna Gaon. So the three things that Abraham does are all reminiscent of the three big mistakes that people have done in his time and before. Um, After eating and drinking, Abraham's guests would be encouraged to thank Hashem for their food. We actually mentioned that already, but it's here in the Midrash, the Bereshit Rabbah, the Targum Yonatan here says this. Perhaps the reason that they did not say a blessing before is because prior to the giving of the Torah, mitzvahs were only rewarded when performed for the sake of Hashem. Avram's guests, however, would have only made blessings before eating to please their host. They weren't doing it for Hashem. They were doing it because Abraham told them to do it. So after being satisfied, though, their blessings were directed to heaven because they ate well, they were good and comfortable. And this is Rav Yisrael Salanter in Darchei Musar, that's actually the way things should be, right? You have to when you make a blessing, the pre-blessing, there are different societies in the world, different cultures. In some cultures, saying a blessing is no big deal. They bless left and right, and in other cultures, they're more specific about when and how they make their blessings. The Jewish people bless Hashem before eating and after eating. That being the case, the after eating is obvious. Right? It's easy uh, it's easy to feel thankful. Ah, I'm full. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. Thank you, Hashem. Yep, rub a dub dub. Thanks for the grub. That sort of idea. It's the blessing before the food that's sort of that you need to really have kavanah. You really have to have intent. Otherwise, you're just saying grace. You're just doing whatever your host tells you to do, and that's not the idea. You have to focus on Hashem, and to do that is a challenge in and of itself, and that's part of working through these challenges that Hashem has given us. Our physical bodies give us one challenge. Our spirituality, our souls, desire for us to grow and get closer to Hashem. So the more we do that, the happier we'll be. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me for this class, and enjoy the rest of your week.